2 pepper plants. Same variety. Same 6-pack of seedlings bought from the same nursery on the same morning. Planted 4 feet apart in the same raised bed. 5 weeks later, one of them is sulking. The leaves have a dull, washed-out green. The stem is no thicker than a pencil. It has produced exactly 1 pepper, and that pepper stopped growing at the size of a thumb and never got any bigger. The plant beside it looks like it belongs in a different garden entirely. The stem is thick enough that it needs both hands to wrap around it. The leaves are a deep, almost glossy green, so dense that the soil underneath is completely shaded. It is loaded with peppers, more than a dozen, several of them already full size and starting to blush toward red. Same seedling stalk, same bed, same sun, same water schedule. The only difference is a liquid that one gardener brewed in a kitchen for less than $1, and the other gardener has never heard of. By the time this video ends, you will know exactly how to make that liquid, how to upgrade it into something close to a complete fertilizer, and why no company selling garden products will ever be able to put it in a bottle and sell it to you, even though every one of them knows it works. Welcome to Brother Charles Tips. Most gardening advice focuses on the wrong end of the plant. People watch the leaves, they watch the fruit, they watch the color, the size, the speed of growth, everything happening above the soil line. But a plant does not build itself from the top down. It builds from the bottom up. Roots first. Microbial relationships first. Soil chemistry first. Everything visible above the ground is simply the downstream result of what is happening in the few inches of soil nobody ever looks at. If that underground biology is weak, pouring more fertilizer on top does not fix anything. It is fuel poured into a broken engine. What this video covers solves the problem at the root, literally. It does not feed the plant directly. It feeds the living organisms in the soil that feed the plant, and at the same time it floods the root zone with growth hormones, pre-digested nutrition, and a compound that protects the plant against drought stress before drought ever arrives. That combination is what produced the second pepper plant in that opening picture. Not a small improvement. A completely different category of plant. Part 1. The organism already sitting in the kitchen. The hero ingredient in this entire recipe is a microscopic single-celled fungus called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. The name sounds like something from a laboratory, but almost every kitchen in the country already has it sitting in a cupboard. It is ordinary baker's yeast, the same yeast used for bread, the same yeast used for pizza dough. Most people only know one thing about yeast. Feed it sugar and it produces bubbles, and that is what makes dough rise. That is true, but it is a tiny fraction of what this organism actually does. Yeast is a living fungus, and the moment it is given water and sugar, it wakes from dormancy and begins producing a complex mixture of biological compounds, not just carbon dioxide. Peer-reviewed research published in journals including Crop Science, Agronomy, and Frontiers in Plant Science has documented several distinct ways that active yeast transforms the health of a plant growing in treated soil. 4 of these mechanisms matter most for a home garden, and understanding all 4 is what turns this from a folk remedy into something backed by real science. Part 2. The first mechanism. Growth hormones. Saccharomyces cerevisiae produces 2 of the most important natural growth regulators found in plants: auxins and cytokinins. Auxin, specifically a compound called indole-3 acetic acid, is the signal that tells a plant cell to elongate and divide. It is the chemical instruction behind every new root tip pushing into the soil. Without sufficient auxin in the root zone, a young plant develops a smaller, weaker root system, slower to establish, and less able to access water and nutrients. Cytokinins perform a parallel role above the soil. They instruct the cells at the growing tips of stems and leaves to multiply rapidly. They are the reason a healthy, well-fed plant can put on several inches of new growth in a single week, while a stressed plant barely moves. Commercial rooting hormone products sold at garden centers for $15 to $20 a bottle are, in most cases, a synthetic laboratory version of auxin and nothing more. That is the entire product. When fermented yeast water is poured into the soil, both of these hormones enter the root zone at once, produced naturally by a living organism instead of synthesized in a lab and sold in plastic. Part 3. The second mechanism, nutrition that needs no digestion. A plant normally accesses nutrients through one of two slow pathways. It can pull dissolved mineral ions directly from the soil water, which is a gradual process, or it can wait for soil microbes to break down organic matter into usable amino acids, which takes even longer. An active yeast colony bypasses both of these pathways entirely. As the colony grows, it releases amino acids, peptides, B vitamins, and trace minerals directly into the surrounding water in a form the plant does not need to break down further. The roots simply absorb what is already there. Think of the difference between handing someone a raw cut of meat and expecting their body to slowly convert it into usable protein, versus delivering that protein directly and immediately. One process takes days, the other takes minutes. This is the reason gardeners who use yeast water consistently report visible changes within 72 hours. The plant is not slowly processing raw material. It is absorbing nutrition that has already been broken down for it. Part 4. The third mechanism, a living shield against disease. Soil is not a passive, inert material. It is a battlefield. Pathogenic organisms, including fungi like Fusarium and Pythium, are constantly probing root systems for a weak entry point, attacking quietly from below long before any symptoms appear above ground. A 2014 study published in the journal Crop Science documented something significant about what happens when an active yeast colony is introduced into that environment. The yeast does not simply feed the plant, it physically colonizes the root zone. It occupies the same microscopic territory that pathogenic fungi and bacteria would otherwise invade, crowding them out through sheer competition for space and resources. Beyond physical competition, yeast cells release compounds called glycopeptides that interact with the plant's own immune signaling, switching on internal defense responses in a manner comparable to how a vaccine primes the human immune system before an infection ever arrives. Across multiple studies, plants treated with yeast solutions have shown measurably lower rates of fungal disease, root rot, and the seedling collapse condition known as damping off. The plant is not only growing faster, it is growing defended. Part 5. The fourth mechanism, the one almost nobody mentions. This last mechanism may be the most valuable of the four, and it is the one that almost never comes up in gardening content. Saccharomyces cerevisiae produces a compound called trehalose, a type of sugar the yeast manufactures to protect its own cells from drying out under stress. It is the same compound that allows certain desert organisms to survive years without water. When yeast colonizes soil around plant roots, trehalose accumulates in that root zone, and the plant absorbs it. Once inside plant tissue, trehalose functions as what researchers call an osmoprotectant. It helps regulate the tiny pores on the underside of leaves, called stomata, which control how much water a plant loses to the air. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including a review published in BMC Plant Biology, have documented this effect directly. The practical result shows up the first time a real heat wave hits. While untreated plants nearby are wilting, drooping, and dropping fruit under stress, plants that have been receiving yeast water tend to hold their structure, hold their color, and continue producing. Researchers studying this effect have even transferred the genes responsible for trehalose production directly into crops like rice and maize, and observed measurably improved drought survival compared to untreated controls. Watering with fermented yeast delivers a milder, accessible version of that same protective effect. So here is the obvious question, and it is worth asking directly. If this liquid produces 4 distinct scientifically documented benefits, why is it not sitting on a shelf at every garden center in the country? The answer has two parts. First, it physically cannot be bottled in any practical commercial form. A synthetic fertilizer is chemically inert. It is mineral salt dissolved in water, and it can sit in a warehouse for years without changing. A living yeast culture behaves completely differently. The moment yeast contacts sugar and water, it begins actively consuming that sugar, producing carbon dioxide and alcohol as it goes. Pressure builds inside any sealed container. A company attempting to bottle and ship this nationwide would face containers that either rupture in transit or arrive already spoiled and inactive. The handful of commercial live culture biostimulants that do exist on the market typically require refrigeration, carry a short shelf life, and sell for $30 to $40 per application. Second, and more importantly, this recipe destroys the business model behind selling garden products. It only needs to be learned once. After that, there is no repeat purchase, no rooting hormone bottle, no seedling starter, no probiotic soil drench subscription. The ingredient is a packet of yeast bought at the grocery store for less than $1, sitting on the same shelf as the baking supplies. There is no patent on a fungus that has existed for thousands of years, and no company can insert itself between a gardener and the result. So the only option is to make it at home. Before getting into the recipe, this is worth saying plainly. None of what was just covered requires taking my word for it. Every mechanism described, the hormones, the nutrient delivery, the immune response, the drought protection, has been published in peer-reviewed journals, available to anyone who wants to read the original research. This channel will keep breaking down science like this, in plain language, every week. So if that is useful, subscribing means the next one finds you automatically. Now, here is exactly how to brew it. Part 6. The Master Brew. This is the longer fermentation version, built to develop maximum biological activity rather than a quick 30-minute mix. The extra time produces a noticeably more potent result. Start with 1 quart of warm water, not hot and not cold, close to body temperature. Test it with a finger. If it feels neutral, the temperature is correct. Water that is too hot will kill the yeast before it ever activates. Water that is too cold will leave the yeast dormant and inactive. Add 1 tablespoon of dry active yeast. A useful detail most people do not realize. Yeast that is past its printed expiration date will often still contain live spores and still work. Half-used packets sitting in the back of a pantry should not be discarded without testing them first. Add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, white, brown, or raw. The type does not matter. The sugar is not feeding the plant directly. Plants have no use for raw table sugar. The sugar exists purely to wake the yeast colony and fuel its multiplication. Combine all 3 ingredients in a glass jar and stir until fully dissolved. Cover the jar loosely, never with a tight, sealed lid. The fermentation process produces gas, and a sealed container can build enough pressure to crack or pop. A paper towel secured with a rubber band or a loose cloth cover works well. It allows gas to escape while keeping insects out and blocking light that would damage the active culture. Place the jar somewhere dark and warm. A kitchen cabinet or pantry that stays above 60 degrees Fahrenheit works well. Then wait. For this longer master version, the waiting window is 2 to 12 hours, not minutes. The longer the mixture sits within that window, the more the yeast colony multiplies, and the more hormones, amino acids, and trehalose accumulate in the liquid. A thick, foamy beige cap will form across the surface, similar to the head on a freshly poured glass of beer. That foam is visible confirmation that the colony is alive and actively working. Once that foam cap appears, the concentrate is ready, and the next step matters enormously. Do not pour this concentrate directly onto plants. It is far too strong in its raw form and will burn delicate root hairs and shock the existing soil microbiome. Take the full quart of concentrate and pour it into a standard 5-gallon bucket filled with plain water, rainwater if available, or dechlorinated tap water otherwise. This produces roughly a 1 to 20 dilution. the safe ratio for direct application to soil. Stir thoroughly. The bucket is now a complete, living biostimulant ready to use. Part 7. The mineral upgrade. The base yeast brew handles biology, hormones, and drought protection extremely well. But on its own, it is light on 3 specific minerals that plants need in larger quantities: potassium for fruit development, magnesium for chlorophyll production, and calcium for cell wall and stem strength. All 3 can be added using items already sitting in a kitchen or beside a fireplace, turning this from a growth booster into something closer to a complete biological fertilizer. The first addition is wood ash. Any household with a fireplace, wood stove, or fire pit likely has a supply of one of the best natural potassium sources available. Wood ash typically contains somewhere between 5 and 7% potassium by weight, along with calcium, magnesium, and assorted trace minerals. Add 1 tablespoon of clean hardwood ash to the 5-gallon bucket. Avoid ash from charcoal briquettes, painted wood, or any treated lumber, since those can introduce harmful residues. Potassium is the mineral most directly responsible for fruit size and sugar content, the difference between a small, underwhelming tomato and a large, heavy one. The second addition is Epsom salt. Add 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, to the bucket. Magnesium sits at the center of every chlorophyll molecule a plant produces. Without enough of it, leaves take on a pale, washed-out yellow, even when nitrogen levels are perfectly adequate. With enough magnesium available, leaves develop the deep, almost waxy dark green that signals a plant photosynthesizing at full capacity. The third addition is powdered eggshell. Dry leftover eggshells and grind them as finely as possible. A coffee grinder works well for this. Add 1 tablespoon of the resulting powder to the bucket. Eggshells are almost pure calcium carbonate, and a fine grind gives soil microbes the surface area needed to break the material down quickly and make that calcium available. Calcium builds strong stems and thick, resilient cell walls, and critically, it is the primary mineral involved in preventing blossom end rot in tomatoes, peppers, and squash, that dark, sunken patch that ruins fruit from the bottom up. Stir all 3 additions into the diluted yeast bucket. The living yeast biology actually helps unlock and chelate these minerals, making them more readily available to plant roots than they would typically be from a standard synthetic fertilizer application. What now sits in that 5-gallon bucket is a complete package: living biological activity, natural growth hormones, drought stress protection, disease resistance support, and 3 critical minerals, all brewed from items that together cost well under $1. Part 8. When and how to apply it. Pour the finished mixture directly at the base of each plant, soaking the surrounding soil thoroughly. Avoid splashing the mineral-rich liquid directly onto leaves, since residue from the minerals can build up on foliage over repeated applications. Apply this at 3 key points across a single growing season. First, at the moment of transplanting, to trigger an immediate surge in root development. Second, at the very start of flowering, to support flower retention and reduce the rate of flower drop. Third, the moment fruit first begins to set, to meet the sharp rise in nutrient demand that comes with fruit development. Within the first 72 hours after application, leaves typically stand straighter and deepen in color. Within a week, visible thickening of the main stem usually becomes noticeable. By the 3rd week, the difference moves from subtle to unmistakable, the kind of contrast that produced the second pepper plant described at the start of this video. If this changed the way you think about feeding a garden, hit subscribe and share it with one person who grows things. That is all it takes to keep this kind of knowledge moving. Until next time, give every root exactly what it needs before you worry about anything above the soil.